Earlier, we had a look at console exclusives on Sony's platform and how first and second party devs were able to utilize PlayStation hardware to create some stunning visuals in real time. While Sony can perhaps lay claim to a larger selection of iconic IPs from Uncharted to Infamous, Microsoft hasn't been standing idle. Microsoft's been spending heavily on tie-ups and exclusivity offers, meaning that Xbox is now more than just a platform you play Halo on. In this multi-part series, we'll be exploring Xbox exclusives from the 360 era all the way up to prospective next-gen titles set to launch in 2020 and beyond. Let's kick things off by looking at the best exclusives on Xbox 360. In the 7th gen, the PS3 was widely hailed as having the best exclusives. With juggernauts like Uncharted and God of War, it's hard to argue that point. Nevertheless, the Xbox 360 had plenty of great exclusives, some just as iconic and innovative as the best from Sony's stable. From Halo 4 to Alan Wake to the Gears of War series, plenty of 360 titles have pushed the system into Uncharted territory. Halo 4, for instance, 343's late-gen swan song, had such stunning visuals that the 1080p version of the game found in the Master Chief Collection compares favorably to Halo 5 on the Xbox One. Alan Wake made use of the Xbox 360's hardware support for anti-aliasing to offer smooth image quality even while running at a measly 960 by 540. There was a reason the title ran at such a low resolution. Atmospheric dynamic lighting and incredible volumetric effects in post-processing combined to create a cinematic spectacle that only Remedy themselves would top with Quantum Break years later. And then, of course, there was the Gears of War franchise. It'd be hard to choose between Marcus Phoenix and the Master Chief if you were selecting a mascot for the 360. Gears of War was not just a great commercial success, it pushed the envelope in terms of what the Xbox 360 was capable of delivering. The original Gears of War was the first Unreal 3 engine game on the console and pushed HDR lighting, high-fidelity models, and next-gen shader effects into the mainstream. It, in effect, became the benchmark for AAA quality on the Xbox 360 that other titles would be measured against. Gears of War 3 and Judgment, on the other hand, went the way of Halo 4. Larger budgets and a more passionate team committed to extracting the last bit of performance from ancient hardware succeeded in creating two of the most visually bombastic titles on Microsoft's platform. Stay with us now, we'll be having a look at exclusives on the Xbox One across the console's lifespan. The early days were rough for Xbox One. Microsoft was fighting something of a losing battle with Sony when it came to the console's launch. Having made a poor bet on GDDR5 memory prices and then having positioned the next Xbox as a media center and not a gaming console, Microsoft found itself selling hardware that was objectively slower than Sony's console at a $100 higher sticker price. We're guessing quite a few heads rolled in Redmond's marketing department. So what was the only way out of this debacle? Give people a compelling reason to buy the Xbox One with great-looking exclusives. And who better to push the graphics envelope than Crytek of "But can it run Crysis" fame? Ryse Son of Rome. Ryse Son of Rome, Crytek's newfangled IP, had great expectations riding on it. The community was aware of the Xbox One's inferior specs relative to the PS4 for several months prior to launch. PS4's launch titles like Killzone Shadowfall looked spectacular, exceeding just about everything available on the market apart from Crysis 3 maxed out on PC. While Ryse was rightly criticized for having overly linear, repetitive gameplay and a short completion time, its CryEngine 3 helped it deliver visual spectacle in spades. For starters, in-game character models had incredibly high polygon counts. Your playable character is made up of 85,000 polys, over twice that of The Last of Us on PS3, considered one of the most technically accomplished 7th-gen titles ever. High-fidelity models weren't what set Ryse's visuals head and shoulders above other 8th-gen launch titles. Ryse made extensive use of physically based rendering. PBR came to be a defining feature of the 8th-gen visual set, but in late 2013, physically corrected materials were new to the scene. Iron, bronze, marble, and leather all accurately interact with light. Ambient occlusion in the form of SSDO is also in use here, grounding objects in the scene and providing an added degree of realism not seen in earlier titles. Ryse received substantial flack at launch due to its sub-native resolution. Resolution gate wasn't completely off the mark. There are many multi-platform games where the Xbox One's 900p presentation is substantially muddier than what's on offer elsewhere. However, Ryse lent heavily on a filmic post-processing pipeline, with extensive use of bokeh, film grain, and per-object and camera-based motion blur. To an extent, the 900p upscale actually works in its favor. The softer presentation sits well with the extensive post-process effects in play here. Forza Motorsport 5. As Xbox's flagship racing simulator, expectations were high when Forza made the leap to 8th gen. Forza Motorsport 5 isn't exactly a great showcase for what the Xbox One is capable in terms of eye candy and visual spectacle. However, when it comes to image quality and consistency, it delivers in a way that was simply not possible with previous generation hardware. Remember back in late 2012 when the air was rife with the promise of 1080p 60fps gaming on consoles? Well, considering that some titles like Neo dropped down to as low as 720p on the PS4 Pro, it's safe to say that that dream's very much up in the air. Forza Motorsport 5 is one of the few titles on the Xbox One that delivers a crisp and smooth native 1080p 60fps presentation. This does come at a cost. While textures and model work improved since Motorsports' last Xbox 360 outing and additional post-processing effects enhanced the atmosphere, the core tech isn't drastically overhauled from 7th gen iterations of the series. From a purely experiential perspective, Forza Motorsport 5 offered console gamers image quality and frame rates that are typically the reserve of mid to high-end PCs, a huge step up from the muddy 720p days of yore. Forza Horizon 2. While it's obvious that Forza Horizon 2 is not as detailed as Forza Motorsport 5, it's worthy of notice that the latter wasn't an open-world game, thus the developers could focus more on improving the set pieces and designs of the relatively limited objects in Motorsport 5. The Xbox One version of Forza Horizon 2 employs a commendable use of the lighting system that really steps up the visuals. Add to that the significantly improved aliasing, seemingly MSAA, on objects and even shadows. The game sure does look slick. The depth of field has been improved considerably, but that has come at a cost of object detailing. High-resolution textures are in place, although at times the shadows and reflections may feel rather lacking, especially when using the driver's perspective inside the car. Sunset Overdrive. Jet Set Radio is a little-known title but well-appreciated Dreamcast game that made its way over to iOS a couple of years ago. While thematically very different from Sunset Overdrive, the Xbox One title channels much of the vibrance, flair, and free movement of its Dreamcast predecessor. Sunset Overdrive isn't a title you typically look at when considering the most technically accomplished console exclusives. Nevertheless, a physically based rendering model paired with dynamic, deferred lighting, and wide-open draw distances make it frequently stunning when in motion. Gameplay depends on a sense of rapid motion, and the zippy open-world traversal is aided significantly by well-implemented camera and per-object motion blur. Halo 5. For a very, very long time, Halo was Xbox. While we haven't had a main series entry in quite some time, Halo 5 Guardians' 2015 launch was hotly anticipated as it was the first 8th gen entry in the series, not counting the MCC remasters. Halo 4 was a fascinating send-off for the series on the Xbox 360. 343 Industries' first game pushed the aging console to its very limits. The results are evident when firing up Halo 4 in the Master Chief Collection on Xbox One. Materials, lighting, and shadows look almost made for 8th gen. Halo 5 builds on this impressive technical foundation, while pushing it even further. As with Forza Motorsport 5, the key gains from the generational leap are in terms of boost to frame rate and resolution. Halo 5 offers visuals and performs better than any previous Halo title. The silky smooth 60fps update is thanks to the implementation of dynamic resolution scaling, dropping from 1080p when the action heats up and taking things back to a sharp native presentation in slower paced areas. Material rendering sees a boost to fidelity with the implementation of physically based materials. The smooth frame rate doesn't come for free, however. Apart from resolution scaling applied to the frame buffer on a whole, alpha effects also operate at a lower resolution. Forza Motorsport 6. Forza Motorsport 5 gave us our first taste of 8th gen simulation racing on the Xbox One. However, it wasn't a huge technical leap over the previous entry in the series. With Forza Motorsport 6, the developer has refined the tech introduced in Motorsport 5, retaining the clean 1080p 60 FPS presentation while cranking things up a notch. Incidental details on tracks such as fencing has been added where it was previously absent. The newer title also makes more liberal use of alpha effects such as dust and fog. The two highlight features, however, are the 3D puddle effect and time of day variation. Wet weather conditions are introduced in this edition, and water builds up dynamics on tracks, significantly affecting handling. Nighttime racing is another game changer. With the sun down, floodlight-lit tracks look and handle differently from how they do during the day. Gears of War Ultimate Edition. The first Gears of War was iconic. When talking about the Xbox 360 platform, it comes to mind just as often as Halo 3. It was also a technical showcase for the then new Unreal 3 engine. With Gears of War Ultimate Edition, Epic could have taken the easy way out and just bumped up the resolution and packaged it as a simple remaster. They took things quite a bit further, however. For starters, textures see a large boost, scaling well with the increase in resolution. The real highlight here, though, is the revamped materials rendering, with physically based materials in use. Metal, rocks, and masonry interact realistically with lighting. While models and the overall level design are decidedly last gen, PBR is a breath of fresh air in a title that, while genre-defining in its time, is now over a decade old. Stay tuned for the next part in this series. We'll be looking at mid-generation Xbox exclusives such as Quantum Break and Gears of War 4. As first and second party studios spent more time with the hardware, they coaxed substantially more out of the Xbox One than you'd expect from what's essentially a Radeon HD 7990 paired with a bargain basement processor. And that about does it for this video. If you enjoyed what you watched and want to see more from GamingBolt, you can always hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell icon next to it. That way you will never miss any of our videos.